Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Mega Man Maker. After several months, we've finally reached the Part 50 milestone. Across this entire LP series, I've covered 305 Mega Man Maker levels to date. So for this occasion, I thought it'd be a great time to discuss and reflect on some things. This video will be thus divided into 3 sections. In the first section, I'll talk about how I rate and classify levels. In the second section, I'll go over some of the things I missed in the earlier parts. In the third section, I'll talk about my current thoughts and suggestions regarding the engine, as well as future plans for this LP series. Beginning with my rubric, I rate levels mostly based upon my first impressions. Due to the large quantity of Mega Man levels out there and my limited time available for recording and editing these parts, I cannot replay through most of the levels. So certain levels are negatively affected by this. But considering how many levels that are out there being published on a daily basis and are waiting to be played, first impressions are rather crucial for maintaining player interest. I try to be somewhat objective with my ratings and provide my biases when applicable, but some subjectivity will pass through. My level scoring rubric, heavily inspired by Magmul 2's rubric, is as follows. Out of a total score of 100, and the 4 categories of design, fun, creativity, and aesthetics, 32.5 points are allocated to design, 32.5 points are allocated to fun, 25 points are allocated to creativity, and 10 points are allocated to aesthetics. Design covers stuff like whether the stage introduces its enemies and gimmicks properly, if it has a proper difficulty curve, challenges feel fair and balanced relative to the stage type, and if thought and effort was placed into the overall cohesiveness of the level. Basically, it's rating the stage's overall design quality. However, as I just mentioned, a stage's design will also be evaluated differently based on the level type. Some things like a good difficulty curve will be a generally universal positive trait, but items such as forced weapon usage will be treated negatively in a traditional stage versus neutral to positively in a special weapons oriented stage. It'll depend on the stage's context, and I'll elaborate further once I get to the different stage types. Nonetheless, this, along with fun, are the most important parts of a stage for me. Fun is a measure of how much fun I had playing through the level, as well as how much fun I think others would like playing through the stage. Like design, it's dependent on the level type. However, it's the most subjective of the 4 categories, and is heavily influenced by player preferences. I'll discuss what I like, am neutral to, and dislike in a few minutes. Creativity is a measure of how creative the level authors were with using the engine's available assets. As there is a rather limited set of non-modifiable assets available in this engine, I won't be as harsh in this category relative to other fan games like Magmul 2. Aesthetics is a measure of how good the level looks graphically, and if the music is appropriate to the stage's feel and/or theme. To be honest, as long as the tile sets and backgrounds look complementary and unified, the screen transitions don't look wonky, and the music isn't out of place, levels will easily score high in this category. Now, with that out of the way, here's how I'll classify the different types of Mega Man levels following this part. Keep in mind that levels can fall under multiple types, and some types are more loosely defined and have fuzzier boundaries than others. Plus, you may define level types differently. The first level type is the traditional stage. Traditional levels are basically the Roadmaster, Star Droid, or similar levels from the classic Mega Man games. You start out at the beginning, make your way through a stage with a central set of gimmicks and teams, perhaps battle a mini-boss, and then fight the master at the end. We've all played at least one of these stages in some form, whether it be from the mainline titles or fan games. With these stages, it's assumed that you have little to no experience with the enemies and gimmicks to come. Plus, you only have the Mega Buster and sometimes the Rush Coil to rely on. Any special weapons are a nice plus, but the main pathway should be completable without usage of any special weapon. Shortcuts, as well as optional and side paths, don't need to abide by this rule. Additionally, players should be able to complete these buster-only, damageless. With this in mind, enemies and gimmicks should be introduced in relatively safe environments and individually first. That way, players can experiment with the items in question and become familiar with them. Following the introduction, raise the difficulty of the challenges, and once players are presumed proficient enough, mix in enemies and other gimmicks into the fray. That way, the stage's progression is kept fresh and new sorts of challenges are introduced. Be sure that the difficulty curve is relatively balanced, that being starting from normal and gradually increasing. The second level type is the Fortress stage. These are essentially the Fortress stages from the Mega Man Classic games and fan games. Most of what I said for traditional levels holds true for this one. The differences are that it's expected you've experienced the enemies and gimmicks before, and you have acquired and utilized some of the special weapons. So a safe introduction to these assets may or may not be present, and the starting difficulty can be higher than traditional ones. There can be some forced weapon usage, but not to the point where most of the stage requires them, like a special weapons oriented stage. The third level type is a special weapon oriented stage. Special weapon stages focus on primarily utilizing one or more special weapons in order to progress through a level. These can frequently cross over with the other types. Think of this as a more general identifier. Frequently, to get a good score here, the challenges must be creative and well utilize the weaponry the player has access to. The fourth level type is the Precision Challenge stage. These are the levels I referred to in the past as challenge levels. In these levels, a large focus is placed into precise platforming and timing, and failing these challenges often results in death, usually by way of spikes or pits. Though the level of precision required can vary depending on what the difficulty the authors are aiming for. Some precision levels are much easier than others. Along with the next level type, the amount of fun a player will have with these kinds of stages will depend squarely on their skill level and preferences. The fifth level type is a time challenge or speedrun stage. These are levels that force players to play through the level as quickly as possible to reach the goal. Often, these are paired up with precision challenges due to the skill and careful movement required. The sixth level type is the exploration stage. This is a less common stage type, but I've noticed it cropping up in rare occasions. In these stages, there are multiple routes to reach the end goal, and/or players are required to explore the stage in order to reach the end. The seventh level type is the puzzle stage. These stages require the player to solve some kind of puzzle to progress forwards. It can be several rooms of puzzles like deadly boxes, or a one-screen puzzle. The 8th level type is a pacifist stage. These stages force players to get through the stage without using a weapon. The 9th level type is the autoplay stage. These play themselves and require no user input. The 10th level type is the troll or kaizo stage. These levels typically violate conventions and good game design in order to misdirect, confuse, and/or outright tick the player off. For instance, off-screen spikes that are reachable, jerkish screen transitions, infuriating yoku block placements, unavoidable damage, intentionally soft-locking the player, etc. I don't mind the occasional joke or misdirection. I don't even mind joke levels or levels that play with the established Mega Man conventions. Yet, it becomes problematic when these elements begin to hamper the gameplay experience and functional game design. Some people may separate troll and kaizo levels, but I lump the two together for simplicity's sake. Like other types, some levels are more trollish than others. The 11th and final level type is the other/miscellaneous category. These are levels that don't fit neatly into the aforementioned 10 level types. Stuff like boss rushes, gimmick-oriented levels, quiz levels, pacifist levels, marathon/endurance levels, and tutorials can fall under this umbrella term. With all of those level types out of the way, here are my preferences on Mega Man levels. In general, I like most level types outside of the more difficult challenge levels, as well as troll and kaizo levels. I'm not the most skilled of Mega Man players, so playing really difficult levels will frustrate me and quickly diminish the fun. In general, I look for a nice difficulty curve and a nice set of gimmicks for each stage. I prefer stages that don't heavily utilize instant death hazards. I also do enjoy alternate pathways to increase the replay value of a level. If I have access to special weapons, I will always try to use them in order to improve my experience. After all, one of my biggest attractions to Mega Man is the variety of special weapons at your disposal. Don't feel bad if I don't rate your level favorably. After all, making a good, let alone decent level is really difficult. There are a lot of things to take into consideration when designing a stage. This is in addition to my preferences on level design and gimmicks. After all, I like certain gimmicks more than others. Nonetheless, like many other things in life, repeated practice and listening to feedback are crucial to becoming a better level designer. Transitioning over to the second section, first I'd like to offer a general correction/clarification on something I've been complaining about over the course of this LP. Long story short, I've been too harsh on the engine and too soft on several levels because of this. My usual trifecta of complaints were uncharitable spike hitboxes, physics bugs, and dropped button inputs. Due to these, I went softer on levels that used spikes or gimmicks like Sparkman platforms. After some discussions and thinking, I've decided to migrate away from this line of thought. Oh sure, I'll still rag on the engine from time to time, but in a reduced capacity. Level designers should take note of a program's limitations, what works well and what doesn't, and design the levels around them, not the other way around. I'll forgive designers when a new game update modifies some assets or mechanics and breaks their levels, but not as much anymore when using assets that are finicky. Generally, I'll be harsher on more levels from this point onwards. Something else I've noticed following version 1.1.x is that the number of dropped inputs I've been encountering has been reduced drastically. I believe it has something to do with the game lagging with certain levels, and thus not pulling the controller button updates fast enough. With the improved game performance, this issue's occurrence has been reduced by at least 90%. For the second half of this section, I'll be going over 4 levels that I wasn't able to complete but forgot to cover in the level editor. The first level I'll cover is That Slide Though by Lxltylerlxl, which was a precision/special weapon oriented stage, where you had to use the charge kick in order to progress through this spike infested stage. Unfortunately, I got stuck on this third screen over here because I didn't have enough skills to slide over here, or rather make the slide through here consistently, due to the pixel precision required. For all of these levels I'll cover, I'll leave timestamps in the description below, as well as the 2 or 3 previous levels I've showcased in the video. Then we had this room. I don't think I would be able to make it with the charge kick, although this was designed before the updated charge kick was added, where you could do air jumps consistently. And in that case you could potentially skip this area over here, air jump over here and slide to the right. And then we have a boss fight against Metal Man, where of course we need to do more precision sliding in order to make our way to the end. And we need to pick the third one up here if we want to actually access the energy element. And all the while we're getting attacked by Metal Man. So overall it's a pretty difficult stage, but I was about halfway through the level. Then again, it was rather short. The second level is Laser Racer by Probably Luke, which was a speedrun challenge level. And this is the one I wasn't able to pass at all in the first section. I never was able to slide fast enough to get over this ladder. After all, the only thing you're allowed access to is the Mega Buster and Topspin. Having the charge kick here would be super useful. At least there's a checkpoint per every section at the beginning, so it's not too frustrating. After all, you have to keep racing all of these instant dead force beams, and sadly I lack the skill to do it properly. This is more designed for a more skilled player, of course. But I really appreciate that the level designer had the foresight to put the checkpoints at the beginning of each section. After all, as I repeatedly stated throughout this LP, the more difficult the stage, the more checkpoint frequency there should be, and this level designer completely understands it. Oh goody, we have a damage boosting segment here. Normally, I would say that damage boosting is a bad thing, but considering this is a challenge level, I'll be willing to forgive it. After all, they pose their own unique challenges of sorts, but it has to be made clear very quickly, and it is made very clear here. And you aren't immediately dropped into the fray because you have to destroy these blocks first. Plus you have all of these special weapon blocks. Oh, never mind, you also have the toss spin, so it isn't really force damage. My mistake. So now we have to use a toss spin in order to proceed onwards to the left. I guess something happens over here. I'm not sure what. Nothing to the right. I thought I would be able to slide into there, but that's where the force beams come from. Oh, they'll probably tell he's coming here. Then we have the green force beams over here. We dive all the way here, and then we have to fight Top Man as quickly as possible because of all the force beams. His weakness is at least a Mega Buster, so it should make it faster, but you need to be on your feet so you don't get killed by the green force beams. And you have to do it fast enough because even if you kill Top Man before the force beams kill you, there's still a short duration of time afterwards where you can be killed by the green force beams. Third up is Dog Park by Enricosut, which was a precision/special weapon oriented stage, which focused on using the rush coil and rush jet to get through this mountainous park. I got through the first segment just fine, but this segment I got stuck on. You're supposed to use rush jet over here, drop down to this safety platform, jet to the left, then jump on the spinning top platform. And you need to position yourself carefully so you don't get killed by the ceiling spikes over here. Then we proceed onwards and have to use the rush coil to jump up here, or rather rush coil, use rush coil again over here, or rush jet, then rush jet over here, and that's the end of the stage. It is a rather short stage and I got stuck on the second and last segment basically. I found this on my random level selections, so I suppose that's why it's short. Too bad I was so close, and I made it here once but I got killed by the ceiling spikes unfortunately. Fourth up is Disdonn Fortress 1 by Disdonn, which was a precision/special weapon oriented stage. The first few sections I got through just fine. In fact, according to Disdonn, I completed up to 75% of the stage, only to get stuck in one of the sections. This was a rather frustrating but still well-designed challenge level, more on the difficult side, but I kept encountering issues with dropped button inputs, but when I played through it again, I was able to do it just fine. There was no more dropped button inputs, thankfully. I died a lot over here, but somehow I got through it at least once. Then somehow I got through this entire segment up until the next checkpoint without any problems. I thought I was gonna die there at least once or twice. I got through this segment just fine. Then when I had to climb up here to the ladders, it's this segment. I was never able to do the Sparkman platform segment correctly. I kept getting killed by the spikes up over here, unfortunately. I wasn't fast enough. I suppose that once you jump on each Sparkman platform, you're supposed to quick slide immediately off of it and jump over here and doing quick jumps over here, and then do a final one over here. But unfortunately I'm not skilled enough. And here's the rest of the stage, even more challenging. This one either forces you to use the top spin or the charge kick, but you have to be careful because of damage boosting. You can damage boost off of the octopus batteries just fine, but falling in the pit there is almost certainly instant death, I think. I would have liked the checkpoint placement over here, or checkpoint. Because of this segment coming over here, we have to be really careful with your charge kick slides. Otherwise, if you're not careful, you'll either embed in the spikes here or accidentally jump and hit one. At least you can quick weapon switch out of the charge kick slides. And there probably should have been a checkpoint here at the very least, because this is the hardest segment of the stage. Especially because you can't damage boost off of it. Oh boy, you can either do a charge kick jump over here, or jump up over here, use the charge kick and get over here. Really scary segment. This is the top spin segment, then we have the checkpoint, and finally a boss fight against Toadman. Gosh, that last segment would have torn my hair out because of how difficult it is. Oh sure, there's a checkpoint right over here, but personally speaking, after the water segment there probably should have been a checkpoint over here, because of how difficult and hair-pulling this section is. At least that's my opinion of a not so skilled Mega Man player. Still, I feel like the level was well designed and the challenge progression was pretty nice, although as I said, the base difficulty curve of this stage, or the base difficulty, is really high and it's really intended for advanced Mega Man players. But alas, this is my favorite stage out of the 4 that I forgot to check using the level editor. So props to Disdonn. I'd like to play some of the levels in the future, but Preferably less challenging ones, hopefully. That would be really nice. Transitioning over to the third and final section of this video, I'd like to emphasize that I'm happy with the recent version 1.1.x updates. These updates included adding 10 new special weapons, several new enemies, an actual mini-boss by way of the hot dog, 2 new bosses, inclusion of the energy bouncer, revamping the UI, making the level editor more robust with descriptions for every asset, and general performance improvements and bug fixes. I would have liked it sooner, but I can understand several of the delays. In my opinion, to improve player retention, I propose for the team to have 2 kinds of updates. The first kind is smaller in scope, but released on a more frequent schedule. These kinds of updates will focus on content like enemies, mini-bosses, simple gimmicks, tiles, background, musical tracks, etc. The second kind is bigger in scope, but released on a less frequent schedule, like for example version 1.1. This will instead focus on content like new special weapons, more complex gimmicks, bosses, items, etc. That way players and designers always have something to look forward to. Nonetheless, I can't emphasize enough how wonderful this game's release has been. It's opened up the door to many would-be Mega Man level designers. The editor is intuitive enough for newbies to get their feet wet, while still allowing for enough content for somewhat experienced designers to play around with, and this will continue to grow as more content updates are released. It's so much easier to share levels to the world and receive feedback now. This, along with Magmal 2, I feel are great community celebrations of this franchise's 30th anniversary. As for this LP series, I plan to keep going forward until I either run out of levels or a better Mega Man Classic level designer comes out. Even then, I'll probably run this series in a reduced capacity. After all, I don't think we'll be running out of levels anytime soon. The next 2 parts will be dedicated to viewer-submitted levels. Once again, I graciously thank you all viewers for sticking with me through 50 parts of this series. It's very appreciated. As for new viewers, I welcome you on board to this LP. I hope you all enjoy the content going forward. Well then, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I hope to see you in a future part.